Welcome back to Debating Metal. I am your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, and as always, my co-host is the everlasting Chris Kaye. Today we're doing a special edition of Debating Metal. As most of you know, the metal world was saddened by the passing of Ozzy Osbourne. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Ozzy's albums with Worst to First, Ozzy Osbourne.
In 1969, a young Ozzy joined Geezer Butler as the singer of his band Rare Breed. After two shows, that band broke up, and then the two reunited in a band, Polka Tulk Blues. Soon they joined Tony Iommi and Bill Ward, whose band Mythology had broken up, and they formed Earth. Stroke of luck, being booked with a band of the same name, they renamed themselves Black Sabbath. The following decade, Black Sabbath laid the groundwork of what we know as metal today. When he was fired from the band in 1979, Ozzy went on to have an arguably even more impactful solo career. The Prince of Darkness left an indelible mark on the world. Not just a multi-platinum artist or a controversial figure, the man's many accolades included being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the UK Music Hall of Fame twice, among others. Whether you found him through his music or maybe Ozfest or even the Osbournes TV show, Ozzy was and is truly an icon.
We also have a new Big Four for you, so stick around to the end. And if you do, please click like or subscribe to always get our latest episode right on your favorite podcast platform.
And don't forget you can interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and on X, or send us an email to debatingmetal@gmail.com. YouTube viewers, click subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when we post the new show.
So sit back, relax, turn it up to 11, and let the debate begin. Chris, last week we lost an icon. It's one of those things that when it happens, you're just like in shock. And actually, last week we lost several icons. Last week was an amazing week in regards to amazing, not in a good way, but amazing that something like that could happen where you have three big names that literally just passed away. One, unfortunate, it was not his time, but it became his time with Malcolm Jamal Warner drowning while on vacation, trying to help someone and save somebody else.
Yeah, that was horrible.
I know that was terrible. And then Ozzy passed. And funny is Ozzy, as much as it was a shock to everybody, it wasn't really a shock. It was like it was kind of weird. Like when you told me, that Ozzy passed, right? I was like, wow. So it was shocking, but at the same time, there was a part of it that was like, he just did back to the beginning in Birmingham. And that to me was more of the shock than him passing. Like if they had not done back to the beginning a week or 2 weeks prior or a week and a half prior to his passing, it wouldn't have been as shocking. We were like, oh yeah, it seemed like he wasn't doing well. Right.
Yeah.
But the fact that he gave everything he had to put on that performance, it makes it more understandable, but at the same time makes it so much more shocking than it would have been.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, you almost got this renewed confidence in a way by him going out there and doing that. I mean, I know a decent amount about Parkinson's disease just because of friends that have had it. And then obviously Michael J. Fox would be one of the standouts that has had it for a considerable amount of time and, lived relatively well for that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think seeing him out there and uh, seeing how much passion he put into it, I mean, in some ways it makes sense that it was just that last bit of energy he had left, and then in others, like you see him and it just seems unreal anytime somebody passes away after something like that. So, um, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Oh, it's insane. And then, of course, shortly thereafter, was it the next day or 2 days later, we hear about Hulk Hogan passing. And you and I are both big wrestling fans. So that was, again, another shock, but at the same time, it's kind of like, you didn't expect him to last as long as he did, really, because he's a wrestler. Wrestlers don't live very long.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those weird things where it's like, he had his name, he was obviously in the spotlight for so many years, but then, between one action and another, he ruined his spotlight, if you want to put it that way. And I'm not here to disparage him or anything like that. It was all on his own. It wasn't necessarily whether it was political, but he also did some stuff personally that was not political that ruined his spotlight. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened in his personal life in the last several, I guess, the last decade or so, that has that affected his shine in the spotlight.
I will say it was nice. I listened to Eric Bischoff talk about him, who's one of his closest personal friends, and seeing another side, because I think we all forget we're human and we all make mistakes. And I think in our culture today, I don't want to get too much into it, but like I think in our culture today, it moral superiority becomes something that everybody's trying to strive for, and to stand over somebody else and say, I'm a more moral than you are. It's like a big thing today, and it's a whole lot of silliness. Like we all make mistakes. I think if the skeletons came out of our closet, not many of us would be proud of ourselves. So yeah, I'm not saying that any of that stuff is forgivable in your eyes versus my eyes or whatever, but at the same time, um, it's very crazy to have two of the like I would say biggest living icons pass away in the same year, or same year, same week, or
Yeah.
same month even. So yeah, absolutely. I think at one time Ozzy, you know, he did some things like peeing on the Alamo and stuff like that that really tainted his view in a lot of people's eyes. And now I think everybody's just remembering the really good stuff, which I love to see.
Oh, with it's really funny with Ozzy. Um, it was been very good to see the way that they have reacted to his passing, just pop culture in general.
Mhm.
It's looked back upon in a very, very good light. Um, he never got political, in any way, shape, or form. He never got in out in the public to take sides for any particular thing, really. He just did his thing. He was Ozzy. And you know what was I think I was thinking about it earlier. So, the Osbournes, the TV show, started in 2002. Um, and that was the year after the release of Down to Earth, that album. And Down to Earth, as good as the album is, I think the tour itself, there was certain things that ended up being where it didn't extend the musical career. It kind of just almost kind of came to an end after that. And I think part of that had to do with the fact that he was living his regular life. The show took off, and it was kind of like, are we're gonna divert and change this career that you have. You went from being this musical icon, now you're all of a sudden a fucking famous TV star.
Yeah.
And that really kind of brought him back to the forefront, because you could tell, part of the thing with him was, after no more tours in 1991 or 1992, he wanted to retire, and he said, no, I can't retire. And he comes out with Osmosis. And then, but between Osmosis and Down to Earth, that was 10 years between, No More Tears and Down to Earth, only two albums in 10 years. So he did pull back from the musical spotlight, and all of a sudden the Osbournes TV show put him back in the spotlight, but it wasn't musical, you know and that's he basically reinvented himself in a way. I don't think he meant to do it that way, but all of a sudden it took off.
I mean, I
you
I
know
think I think a lot of his changes over the years obviously were affected also by he had a really stellar team behind him. I mean, his wife being the head of that, her constant control over his image is much to his benefit in a lot of ways too. So, say what you will about Sharon, she really was I think a lot of it was people don't like her so much that it takes really any heat off of him in a way, but at the same time, you know, she has a vision for what he should be and what he should get, and um, yeah, I mean, she changed a lot of that for him too. So
You can't take away the genius behind Sharon Osbourne. Um, I mean, she has been by Ozzy's side the entire solo career. I mean, she was there when he was at his lowest point after Sabbath fired him. She was there to help pick up the pieces so that she can put him together so he can have a solo career. And she pushed him forward through Randy's death. She helped him put the band back together, or a band back together, so that he can continue his solo career. Now, mind you, his own personal actions she could not control, but at the same time, but she controlled what she could possibly control, and she did a great job. You can't take anything away from her for that, because if anything, that's kind of like, if I became famous, that's what I would like my wife to do for me. You know, just be the person behind the scenes that is basically protecting at all costs the person that she loves. You know, and that's what she did. That's what Sharon did for Ozzy.
yeah.
So we're here to talk about Ozzy's solo albums. So it's all his solo stuff, nothing with Black Sabbath. Um, he's got 12 albums of new music, and um, it's a very interesting career beginning to end. It's very, very diverse, very eclectic in many ways, even from the first album. So there's a lot of diversity for certain things. So we're gonna do worst to first. We're gonna pick our favorites. We're gonna pick the least favorites and go over what we like and dislike about each album. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get this started. Chris, why don't you go ahead and go with number 12?
All right. So number 12, I put Ordinary Man. Um, so it was tough, I guess, because I don't think my number 11 is a whole lot better. That being said, I listened to every album in its entirety to put this list together. And I found that I didn't dislike Ordinary Man. I think it's just so different than everything else in the discography in a lot of ways, because it's not really a hard rock album. I think it's just more of a project, and Ozzy kind of shows a little more diversity in the his style, being paired with different musicians, and that really are not his typical band, right? Like, this wasn't a Ozzy band album. This was really an Andrew Watt project that he worked with Ozzy on, and they brought in Duff McKagan and Chad Smith and some other people, lots of other people, and it's not bad. I mean, Ordinary Man itself is really interesting because it's got uh Elton John on it. I think Under the Graveyard's probably my favorite song on the album, but I wouldn't even consider it like a favorite. Like, I kind of classified all of the albums when doing this into two different categories, like songs I like and songs I love. And so I don't think Under the Graveyard even kind of meets songs I love category. But I do like Under the Graveyard, Ordinary Man, Scary Little Green Men, and Holy for Tonight. I thought all those were pretty good songs. I probably won't add them to my playlist, but at the same time, um, the album is better than I remember it. I think it maybe in retrospect, because Ozzy just passed, I'm a little more open to it, but at the same time, I think the production's not where I'd like it to be. You know, it's not terrible, but it's not great either. So it's just kind of a middling album, but it is nice in some ways. Like I like listening through it. I didn't hate it. I didn't want to turn it off. I just listened to it. So would you what what would your number 12 be?
Actually, my number 12 is also Ordinary Man.
Okay.
So it's funny because a lot of what you said right now about the album is kind of, I have similar feelings. It's not a metal album. It's rock to hard rock kind of thing, but it's still Ozzy in a way. And Ozzy's voice sounds great. I'll give him that. Now, whether or not there's a tremendous amount of processing on his voice, or if there's a tremendous amount of auto tuning on his voice sounds good. And that's something that we can sit there and say, you know what, Ozzy still sounds good. And even toward that, if anybody listens to some of the isolated tracks from back to the beginning, his voice it's funny. I can't say it wasn't good, but his voice wasn't what it always has been. There was a lot of rough patches there, but when he was able to push past those rough parts, that his voice was real gravelly. When he hit the note, he hit the note, and that was cool.
Hmm.
So in this particular case, his voice sounded great. Um, I You probably like more songs on this album than I do, because what I began to do, or began to feel like when I was listening to this, was like, it's almost like you said, it's an Andrew Watt project. This is more of all his albums, this was the first one that was truly a solo album. And I say it that way because Ozzy always felt, all the way back from the beginning, Blizzard of Oz was a band. It originally was supposed to be Blizzard of Oz, the band. So he always had that band mentality. And he always talked about the band, the band, the band. This was the first time where he didn't have a band. He had players come in. And oddly enough, this one, in a weird way, is probably more bandish than the one after this one. But at the same time, there are so many um, guest stars on this album. Um, I don't necessarily think that's beneficial, you can say, but at the same time, it's a solo album. It's Ozzy solo, and you know Andrew Watt was basically tasked with, let's put Ozzy back on the map again. And I agree with you. The production is kind of weird. I don't like this kind of production. I just, today's modern production sucks. I'm just gonna put it that way. It's a lot. Certain bands can overcome it. Certain other bands just sound like everybody else, and it's hopefully taking a turn back to um, what was the word? Real recording, because the constant um changing, your what do I call that? I'm totally blanking on it. You're triggering a sound, and instead of using a real sound because that drummer plays a certain way, you're triggering a snare sound, right? You've got samples. And this thing, the one thing that stood out between this and Patient Number 9 was the freaking acoustic guitar, not even acoustic guitar, the non gain or non distorted electric guitar sounds like a freaking harpsichord almost the whole time. It's just like, what is going
Yeah.
on here? And it's like, and why is every song starting with this freaking clean guitar? It's like, you know, it was really kind of irritating after a while. It's like, why does this guitar sound like this? Why? Because it's probably not a real guitar, or it's being so heavily processed that it takes away the natural sound of the instrument, and it's really, really sad that that production is like that. So Getting
in tandem with that, this is kind of a side note. I was watching a streamer. Um, it's funny. I was watching a streamer watch an old cartoon that he had never seen before, something that I grew up with, and I was listening to the music, and it was back when that those kind of shows had an orchestra. They would have somebody write the music for the show, and then an orchestra would play, and so it was very real. And I was listening to it, and I was just like, man, I really miss that. Everything now is very like it's composed on a computer, and it doesn't have like that resonance. It doesn't have that timbre. That like even like when you're live versus hearing something recorded. I mean, sorry, yes, I said that the right way. I had to think about that. But like when you're live somewhere and you hear something, it hits your ears differently than when it's recorded. So there is a sound that is sorely missing from today that has just some kind of realism to it. And I totally agree with what you're saying.
right, and I get where you're coming from. I remember the first time that I heard a CD, and it was from my at the time he was my best friend. His dad had bought a CD player. I mean, I don't even know how much money he spent on it because the first CD players were outrageously expensive. Right? But I want to say this is either 1986 or 1987. And he's like, guys, you're not going to believe this. Because CDs sound amazing. You don't hear anything until the music starts. You don't hear the hiss of a tape. You don't hear the scratches from a record. Nothing. Just boom, the music starts. So he says, "You got to listen to this." And he pulled out David Lee Roth's Yankee Road, or the first album, "Eat 'Em and Smile," or yeah, his first full length album. And he puts on Yankee Rose, and he cranks the stereo, and you don't hear anything until bring that first guitar intro or guitar chord that Steve Vai hits, and it's like, wow, that was so cool. That introduction to digital, even though the album itself was recorded on 2-inch tape and then transferred to digital, that introduction to digital and silencing all the outside noise essentially is what led us to where we're at today. And now it's not even silencing the outside noise. It's like you don't have any outside noise. You don't have anything. You
Yeah.
have everything completely made by computers. And that's the sad part of production today. And unfortunately, at some point somebody is going to say, "Hey, we need to get back to being real." And I don't know who that's going to be. It's going to be in the rock world because obviously pop music is completely digital,
it's,
completely
it's not
completely
going to
made
come
up.
from rap.
No, not at all. Well, and it's funny because in the rap world they use old records, so it almost kind of has that only because um, the samples that they're using have that ambiance to it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, but like if you're talking pop culture, you're talking pop music, you're not going to get that. So enough of our sidetrack because this is absolutely important to what we're talking about. But it's like we could talk all day about how shitty production sounds today.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Number 12 for me was also Ordinary Man. A couple of highlights for me were Straight to Hell, and Scary Little Green Men was pretty interesting to me as well. Um, and the funny thing too, along with this, is there's the slow songs. We'll get this out of the way now because we're going to repeat it over and over and over again. Pretty much every album has a song that Ozzy is very melancholy about. If you really break it down, every single album has a ballad, and if it doesn't have two, it only has one. Usually, that one is very melancholy, kind of almost very reflective to some degree. And it's weird because Ozzy doesn't write his own lyrics. So a lot of this stuff is really interesting that it comes from him, vocally, but it's not necessarily his thought process. And a lot of it aligns up with stuff that he's gone through. So it's a very interesting uh, dichotomy between him being him singing and singing words that are melancholic, and then him not writing the lyrics. It's pretty interesting.
I wonder do sometimes like how much input he has because like when I listened to it was years ago on what's that show called that metal show when Jakey Lee was talking to them about how he brought in Bark at the Moon, and Ozzy listened to it and he said, I think I can do something with this song, and they added some notes and things. I wonder if like sometimes Ozzy did have some level of input, or at least on the conceptualization of the song. This is what the song should be about, or something. I don't know. I've always been kind of curious about that.
Me too. And it's funny because, you know, we make fun of, and we have throughout the history of the show, we make fun of Bark at the Moon because that album's completely written by Ozzy Osbourne
Yeah.
on paper.
On
Um,
paper.
however, we all know Jakey Lee had something to do with it. I think Bob Daisley has something to do with it. Uh, it's one of those things where um, Bob Daisley wrote most of Ozzy's lyrics when he was involved with Ozzy. Jake, or the guitar player, Randy, Jake, Zach has written pretty much all the music that's been part of this. So what's Ozzy's part? Ozzy, if my understanding is melody. He puts together and hums, the words. He'll take the words and he'll apply it to the melody of the song and say, that's his part of it. So that is important, obviously. I never thought that Ozzy lived in such a vacuum where all of a sudden he just walked into the studio and said, "Are you going to sing this?" and didn't know shit about it. I don't think that's ever the case. But there's also, he doesn't play an instrument other than his voice. And so to me, melodies was his biggest thing. But he probably had something to do with some arranging as well. I mean, he might sit there and say, "I don't think this belongs there. This might be better used over
Well,
here," kind of thing.
that's what Jakey Lee was saying in that interview, was that
Right.
he rearranged some things. And I think if you have a musical ear, which in order to be a singer, you have to have some level of musical ear. Like you can't. Well, that's not 100% true. There's some shitty singers out there, but you know what I mean. Like like if you're a prolific singer like Ozzy, then yes, you have some level of musical ear. Even if you don't know how to read music, you can hear it and you can express what you're trying to get across. So I think there's that. I think like in similarity to say your boy Lars Ulrich, like
My boy.
he is. So but in similarity, like Ozzy would hear something and change it up. Well, that's what Lars does, right? Like he
Right.
he didn't necessarily write all the parts, but he knows how to lay them out to be an effective song. So I think it's pretty cool. Like going back to the album, like I think it's it's definitely not as bad as I remembered it being, and I think that was just because you're waiting 10 years for Ozzy to put out an album. It's not what you expect, but it is what it is.
Right. All right. So let's move on to number 11 because we'll probably talk a lot about shit along the way.
Yeah. All right. So number 11, I have patient number 9. Um,
Bingo. I have the same thing.
okay. So it's marginally better than Ordinary Man. And I say that being I th- I liked the songs that I liked more than what was on Ordinary Man. Um, Parasite I thought was pretty cool. Escape from Now is an okay song. Thousand Shades, is that what it was called? Sounds wrong. Um, but it's really my first time listening to this album. I
Yeah,
think
that's what it's called, The Thousand Shades.
Okay, Dead and Gone was the highlight of the album for me. And then Degradation Rules, which was with Tony Iommi, was pretty cool. Like there's Tony Iommi on this one, Zach Wilde, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck. So I mean, there's a pretty cool assortment of musicians. This is like it is really kind of a goodbye album in a way, right? It's him playing with all his friends and things like that, and it's decently fun. They did at least visualizers for just about every song, literally every song on the album. But then they did some music videos that are kind of fun too. So I mean, there was some effort put into it, but again, it's not a whole lot better than Ordinary Man as a whole. Production, I think, sounds a little better at least. Um, so I would say Dead and Gone was the one song that I would put under like I liked it a lot, and then everything else was just kind of it was okay.
Okay, I mean, I have similar feelings about this album, like you. Um, I'm not a big fan of the production. Again, I won't get too deep into that at all. I'll put it this way: I liked Immortal, and that has Mike McCready on it. Some really good guitar playing on that song. I liked Parasite as well. Um, but here's the funny thing: so you listen to No Escape from Now with Tony Iommi, and damn it if that's not a Black Sabbath song.
Oh,
I don't.
it sounds just like something off of 13.
Yes, yes, it sounds like something off of 13. And while it was written by Ozzy and Andrew Watt and Chad Smith, and Ali Tamposi, Iommi had his influence there as well. It's definitely to me a very Black Sabbathy kind of song. So it wasn't bad, but it was like you said, something off of 13, kind of little generic Black Sabbath kind of sound to it. Degradation Rules also featuring Ozzy, featuring Tony. Similar in that way, a little bit less Black Sabbathy to some degree, but it was. I think there was a little bit more, which is weird because a lot of these songs, like you said, there was visualizers for all this. That one to me seemed like they paid a little bit more attention to it, which is really weird because it obviously was not a big single or anything like that. Um, I think I agree with you in a way. The sound it's a little bit more rockish. To me, this is a little bit more bandish because you got the same group of people. Um, to some degree, it's weird. So, like for instance, Zach plays on a bunch of songs. Um, and then Rob Trujillo's on a bunch of tracks playing bass, along with Duff McKagan on a few tracks. Chad Smith plays drums on almost the whole thing. So there's probably a little bit more consistency in terms of the musicians that are on here. That makes it seem more cohesive, like you mentioned. So I give it that. This definitely does sound a little more cohesive than Ordinary Man. So that's why, for those, it just doesn't live up to everything that he's done. So that's why it's number 11 for me.
Yeah. And to repeat, I don't think either of them are bad albums. So if you haven't, like, they're not bad. They're just not good. Like, is that a fair
it,
statement? They're just kind
it's
of
it's
middling.
fair. You'll have to look at it as the career as a whole. At some point, if you release 10 albums, there's going to be a 1 through 10. Okay.
Yeah.
They can all be solid albums, but something is going to be number 10. And it's going to go up from there. So in this particular career, in this particular case, Ordinary Man, in my opinion, was the weakest.
Yeah.
Patient number 9 is the next less weakest, but it's still weak. But when you start going down the numbers and you start getting to the better albums, there's a reason why. Put it this way: Ozzy wasn't making a career off of these two albums. Okay,
No,
this
these
is
were
the
just fun
yeah.
for him.
These
Yeah.
these are albums that you've done because your career is you have an established career. So all right, number 10.
All right, for number 10, I have Scream. Um,
And so do I.
Funny enough. I listened to this again for the first time in a long time, and um, I don't hate it. I think the production's actually not bad. Like listening to it on my speaker system sounded pretty good. Um, I think maybe given another album, I think Gus G maybe could have done some more, like some better stuff with Ozzy, but his style isn't really my thing either. There's a little bit of like metal coreness to it, I think, that I'm just not into personally. That being said, like I thought Let Me Hear You Scream, it's a pretty cool song. Um, it's one of those kind of anthemic ones that Ozzy has on pretty much every album. Life Won't Wait. I think that was a pretty cool song, and Crucify was okay. Um, so when it's 3 out of 14 tracks though that I kind of enjoyed, like there's a lot of monotony there, and it's just not really for me.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying. For this one, okay, this is his last true band effort when you look at it that way. Um, I like the song "Let Me Hear You Scream." I think it got to the point where it was the writing was becoming more. Um, let's go with what Ozzy kind of is all about, like Soul Sucker. That just didn't make sense to me. Um, Not a bad song, but at the same time, it's just like it doesn't make sense to me. Uh, in a
I,
way that
it's really too long too. If that song was like a minute shorter, I think it would be a lot more entertaining, but it repeats that soul sucker part so many times that it just, I don't know, it doesn't work for me.
I mean, the album when it first released barely registered on my radar as far as the album's out. I bought it at some point along the way, and "Let Me Hear You Scream" was the big song, which is not a bad song. Um, but yeah, I'm looking at the songwriting credits, and it's all Ozzy with Kevin Churko and Adam Wakeman. Like, where's Gus G? Why is the guitar player, the one playing these songs, the one that's going to be basically the driving force behind it, not involved in the songwriting? You know, so that's a huge kind of thing for me. Like, is this something where Gus G just wasn't involved and just bring him in to play guitars? I mean, that's never been Ozzy's MO as far as his guitar players are concerned.
Yeah.
His guitar players were always the main songwriter. So Kevin Churko, a producer musician who comes in to produce the album, he's the main songwriter. It becomes less band and more project, more solo. Understandable. And then Adam Wakeman, which is weird, is the keyboard player, which is Rick Wakeman's son. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with Adam writing it and with Kevin writing it. It's just like, where's Gus G? That's a huge thing for me. It's kind of weird that way. And the fact that you're saying that there's a little hints of metalcore in it, it's kind of weird because he had nothing to do with the damn songs. So it's a weird one for me. But it's my number 10, like yours.
All right. So my number 11, my number 9 is Down to Earth.
Ooh, now we're getting different.
Okay. So by no means do I think it's a bad album. Um, but what I do find when I listen to it now that I don't like about it as much as some of the others is that it is very derivative of his previous work. There's lots of references musically and, um, you know, intentionally done to harken back to the earlier days, right? It gets me through. I think it's a really great song. I remember I was telling you a story the other day about how when I was in high school, my buddies and I all got into my friend's car. We went to the record store. We picked up Gets Me Through, sorry, Down to Earth, and we put that first track on, and we just listened to it 3 or 4 times because it was so cool. Going through the album, just driving down the road, it's one of those core memories that, like everybody has them, where you think back to that time, you're like, man, that was a lot of fun. So I mean, it has a special place in my heart, but like as listening to it again, I was, and especially in the context of listening to every album in full, I was like, okay, well, I see what he's doing there. They're referencing this song, etc. So there was a lot of that where I just thought, this almost feels in some way um, like, hey, I'm still relevant, and I think that's maybe not the way that it came across back then, or maybe I don't know, maybe it did. But that's kind of a weird vibe to feel. So, yeah, it's a cool album. I think Facing Hell, Junkie, Running Out of Time, they're all good songs. But Gets Me Through is definitely the standout.
Oh, I agree with you there. Um, so this album is not my number 9, but I'll make a comment on it as I'll talk about it a little bit more later. Um, this is one of those where, Ozzy's going through the songwriting process. It did come out 6 years after Osmosis. So at that point, Ozzy's, is not not gone into hiding. You don't want to look at it like that. But Ozzy had basically had a lot of downtime, you know.
Yeah.
Did his own thing. The Osmosis was the I can't stand to be retired tour. And so um there's that about it. And then after the tour was over, it was kind of like, the band kind of broke up type of thing, again, because after no more tours, that's what happened. The band broke up and everybody went their separate ways. Zach went and did um, Black Label Society and all sorts of stuff, and they got back together again for Osmosis, and you know, but Down to Earth was heavy in parts, but at the same time, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show or beginning of this process here, um, Ozzy has his melancholy moments, and that's Dreamer, you know. So there's that part of it. I myself, big fan of Junkie, but I'll talk more a little bit about the songs when I get down to where it's for me on my list. Um, so you had it at number 9. I have Black Rain at number 9. Um, we're just basically going down and alternating, alternating or going down the list of the more recent albums for me, at least. Black Rain, um, that for me is my number 9 because I think Down to Earth and Osmosis and all the other albums are better than this. You obviously have a different opinion. I like the song "I Don't Want to Stop" from Black Rain. Um, and realistically, that and Not Going Away were the two singles off the album. I'm not a big fan of the rest of the rest of the stuff. It's just one of these things where I couldn't get into the album as a whole. Um, I was beginning to think about it as Ozzy's now becoming a caricature of himself,
Hmm.
and that's just the way I began to feel about with albums coming out. It's really weird. Like there's a lot of bands that were, I guess you could say, towards the latter half of their career, in the twilight of their career, where musically I feel like they were going through the motions. And this album is one of those, like Zach is putting out, he's helping Ozzy with the songwriting, and Kevin Churko as well, but Zach is got BLS on his mind, and so and that was what it happened. Like Scream to me again was a similar kind of situation where it was you know uh a different kind of album. Kevin Churko was going for a certain thing. Black Rain for me is an extended BLS album, because it's Zach writing it, but it's not the best stuff off of BLS, you know. So that's where I come up with that. So I'm that's the way I feel about the album.
All right. Well, Black Rain is my number 8. So, I don't 100% agree with you as far as like how you feel about the way that the songs, came across. Um, I think there is a lot of creativity in the album where, coming off of the last, what was the one right before it? It was
This one, before this one was Down to Earth.
Down to Earth, right? And I think Down to Earth was drawing a lot of um, its melodies and ideas from previous stuff from Black Sabbath, etc. And whereas this one was a little bit more creative, and like I think I Don't Want to Stop obviously is the biggest highlight on the album because it was on TV shows and it was in Rock Band and Guitar Hero and all that stuff. But also Lay Your World on Me I think is a really great song. Like lyrically it's really beautiful. It's one of those ballads that sticks out in my mind. Probably very underrated. 11 Silver is really cool. I think it's one of those songs that the lyrics alone kind of make it like it's I think anybody who has any kind of addiction can probably understand this song. Take one more or it was like take a pill to take the pain away, take one more to make me crazy. Like that's pretty deep. And then Trapdoor, which is the last song on the album, is super out there for Ozzy. Like it is, trying something very different. So, different interpretations, it's fair. Um, but I think it like as much as Down to Earth is a fun album to listen to. I think the additional level of creativity and trying something different puts this a little bit over it for me.
I respect your opinion. All right, so that was your number 8, right?
Hmm.
My number 8 was Osmosis, and what I what I like about Osmosis is that the songs are good. I mean, Perry Mason, interesting choice of subject matter, good song. See You on the Other Side, outstanding song. Um, and then what's the other big one off of this one? I Just Want You. So those three right there just kind of lend itself to this is a good album, right? Um, I like that because there's a lot behind this to me in my thing. So Ozzy's trying to basically he's following up an album that was supposed to be his sign off, and it's also an album he's following up off that was a huge album. No More Tears was huge. I mean, it was all over the place. And so the good thing about it was that Ozzy went back to the well and he called up his buddy Lemmy again and says, "Hey, I need another sappy love song. What do you got?" So they went, they had My Mom Coming Home that was on No More Tears. Um, he brings him See You on the Other Side. Now, to me, just seeing that title, I remember him talking a lot about Randy and seeing Randy when he gets to the other side. But when you listen to the lyrics or when you pay attention to it, it's not that at all. But it's still about a relationship, um, and it is. I mean, it's a relationship in that same sense. The person. It seems as though the person passed away. Um, it is. It's just a. It's a fucking deep song, and it, Lemmy's fucking amazing. I don't know if you agree with me. And that, let's not even talk about Lemmy's personality and Lemmy's, Motorhead Lemmy.
Like his
Lemmy
songwriting capability.
songwriting capability for
Oh yeah.
Lemmy and the lyric writing. I mean, he wrote the lyrics to this song. He wrote the lyrics to Mama I'm Coming Home. I'm sorry, was Mama Not I'm Coming Home, not the only song that was played that was not on the first album during, at Back to the Beginning. That was literally they played 4 songs from Blizzard and Mama I'm Coming Home. That's something to be said about that song. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But
I
fucking A,
mean,
let me.
he wrote that one song that was like about kids that are being abused. I can't think of what.
Oh yeah, I remember the Motorhead song.
Yeah, I mean he has some really deep, thoughtful lyrics. Given his later career, not necessarily in the early days, but like
Right.
he really does have some beautiful songs.
Yeah. So, touching on the production of this album, the album is produced by Michael Beinhorn, who's coming off of Soundgarden's Super Unknown at the time, and obviously Super Unknown was huge for that the time. Um, Lots of singles off of that, as far as for Soundgarden, but production wise, it's a little bit different sounding. And from what I understand, Michael Beinhorn had created this a new tape machine that was analog, but that could still synchronize with the newer technology. And so he was testing it out, and he had like 20 or 24 something tracks for Ozzy's drums. And supposedly this is supposed to be the most realistic sounding drum album, drums on an album. And when I heard the album, I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, that doesn't sound any more realistic than anything else. So there was a downside to that for me. However, the production to me fell a little flat as far as uh, just that was the biggest part for me. That the drums didn't live up to the hype that I had read about, so I was kind of disappointed. But the songs themselves were pretty good. Perry Mason, the single, I Just Want You, See You on the Other Side, those that had a lot more meaning to me, just from listening to them. And I'm like, this is pretty good shit. Dr. Jekyll Doesn't Hide, or Mr. My Jekyll Doesn't Hide. Um, Interesting song. Just the whole album in general was pretty good for me. I liked it much better than I liked Black Rain. So that's why it was number 8 for me.
Okay. I'm about to throw out a controversial one.
Oh boy, here we go.
My number 7 is Bark at the Moon. So obviously people love Bark at the Moon. I think the title track is an absolute classic, and if it was based on just that merit, then yeah, it'd be a lot higher. That being said, I'm not the biggest fan of the rest of the album. Like a long time ago, you and I had a conversation about what was better, Ultimate Sin or Bark at the Moon. We even did an episode about it, and at the time, I was in my head, because I'm thinking like Bark at the Moon is such a great song. I'm thinking like there's no way that it that Ultimate Sin is better. I came out feeling the opposite, and then even more so, like really looking back at it, like yeah, I think it's still a great album, but I think there's 6 albums that are better. Um, so I mean, I like Rock and Roll Rebel. You're No Different. So tired and waiting for darkness, but coming off of the first 2 albums, which I think are substantially better. Um, it's just not as good as some of the other stuff, and it's not as impactful to me personally. So yeah, I mean I have it at 7, but there's 6 albums that are even more amazing to me.
um, I see where the controversy comes in. I don't mind it at number 7 for you, because I get where you're coming from, because I remember when we did that episode, and I remember the comment I said to you, because you were so like Bark at the Moon, so much better, and I said, listen to Ultimate Sin and tell me what you think afterward, because you hadn't heard Ultimate Sin as a whole in a while, um, and your opinion changed, right?
And I had mixed up, it's funny, but at the time I had kind of mixed up the two in my head, because a lot of times I would be listening to uh, you know, compilations and things like that. Like I used to burn my own CDs constantly, and oh, I want to put this here, make my my version of whatever. And so I kind of forgot what songs were on what albums, and then I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow, I was totally wrong.
Yeah, and so Bark at the Moon has its merits, and I will say this: Bark at the Moon was the first Ozzy album to come out that I got new. Um, Blizzard and Diary of a Madman were already out. So they had already existed prior to me getting into Ozzy, where now, I'm getting into it. I saw Ozzy in concert on Saturday night on MTV. And I'm like, this is so cool. So now I'm waiting for his first new album. So that was the first one to come out after Randy's death, obviously, but the first one to come out that was new to me. And I listened to the shit out of that album, and I know all those songs pretty much by heart. And I will say this, that you know I see where you're coming from when it comes to your placement of that album, and I don't think it's as controversial in my eyes as you say you think it might be. But I can see where you say that, because there are going to be people out there. How can you say that? Because everyone has their own opinion. Like an asshole. But um, I mean, even some of the off songs on this one, like like "So Tired" and "Slow Down," to me are I just know them. Rock and Roll Rebel. Now you see it, now you don't. We'll talk more about it when it gets to my place on this album. But it's I can see where you're coming from. So good for you. Good for you standing on that hill. All right, so that's your number 7, right? You said.
Yep.
Okay, so my number 7 is Down to Earth. Um, and so what we were talking, I'll just touch upon it because I talked a little bit about it already. I liked the album. I liked the heaviness of the sound. To me, it was so much more heavier sounding than Osmosis. So that's part of the reason why I liked it. The fact that Rob Trujillo, which he wasn't in Metallica at the time, but I knew Rob from Suicidal. I knew Rob from doing a little bit of BLS. So just the fact that Rob was on there, I was like, oh man, he's such a good bass player. Um, and watching him play those songs was pretty cool. Um, I like Junkie a lot on this album. I like Gets Me Through, Dreamers, the melancholy song I keep talking about. There's some really good shit to me on this album, but Gets Me Through and Junkie are so heavy in a way. I do like the fact that Ozzy. I like when bands reference old stuff that they've done. Um, whether it's like sort of like Rob Halford with Resurrection. I mean, that was, to me,
Yeah.
the lyrics were so good on that, referencing his time in Judas Priest and then Fight and then Two, uh, and just sticking the word two in there just so you can reference it, because there was nothing else to reference on that. But that was so clever, and this is the same thing between Junkie and Gets Me Through. It's very clever. And kudos to Tim Palmer, because I'm pretty sure Ozzy wasn't the one who wrote the lyrics. But Tim Palmer wrote Gets Me Through with Ozzy. And Junkie was with Marty Fredrickson and Joe Holmes and Rob Trujillo. So you see that, and that's almost a band effort right there. Drummers hardly ever get songwriting credits.
True.
Lars Ulrich. So I like this album a little bit more than I like Osmosis. Not as much as, oh, excuse me. Yeah, a little bit more than Osmosis, and definitely more so than Black Rain and Scream, but not as much as the rest. So there you go.
Fair enough. Um. All right. So my number 6 is No Rest for the Wicked.
Mine too.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So initially I didn't give this a lot of chances. And over the course of us doing this show, it's come up a few times with different things we've talked about, and over time, I've come to enjoy it quite a bit more. Um, I really like Miracle Man and Tattooed Dancer. I think those are great songs. Devil's Daughter, Crazy Babies, Bloodbath in Paradise, Fire in the Sky, and Demon Alcohol. Like that's almost the full album that I really enjoy. Um, I would say that for me this was one that snuck under the radar for a long time. But as I went back and listened to it, I found a lot more to enjoy every time, and it's really risen in my view.
Okay, I can see that. So to me, it's weird. I don't want to. They're not going to be what I say they are right now. To me, this is a companion album to Bark at the Moon. Two different guitar players, so I understand that. Two different time periods, totally understand that. But production wise and generic wise, I guess you could say, this album to me is very similar to Bark at the Moon. Um, no Rescue. I love Miracle Man. Great song. The lyrics are very poignant. As was it Jimmy Swaggart literally recently passed away himself. Um, I drove through his hometown on my way back from North Carolina the other day. So I was driving through and I go, Faraday, Louisiana. I know that Jerry Lee Lewis, Mr. Rock and Roll, was born there. And I'm like, there's somebody else recently that I heard was from Faraday, Louisiana, and it was Jimmy Swaggart. And I'm like, oh, shit. Yeah. Well, there you have that. So he was the subject of Miracle Man. And a lot of stuff that happened in the 80s to people like Ozzy and the whole, was it the uh, Satanic Panic. Although it wasn't so much the Satanic Panic with Jimmy Swaggart, so much it was just like he just didn't like heavy metal. Um, A Devil's Daughter is a good song. Crazy Babies, interesting song. Breaking All the Rules, pretty cool. Bloodbath in Paradise, Fire in the Sky. The same thing that you said. You know, those songs really stand out for me. Demon Alcohol, Tattoo Dancer. It's a solid album front to back, especially with the fact that Zach Wilde's coming in. He's what, 21 years old or something like that. And I will say this, I apologize. We did an episode. We were talking about Zach a few episodes back, and I kept saying, "Oh yeah, he came in at 17. He wasn't 17 years old. He was 21 or 22 years old." So I apologize for making that mistake. But this one was one of those kind of band effort type things. Again, you have Zach and Bob Daisley. You have Zach and Randy Castillo. That's the big one. Zach and Randy and Bob. It was very similar to um, the Blizzard of Oz album, where the whole band was writing songs, and that was really cool. And that's why there's such a solid group of songs in the middle. But there's other albums that I like better.
Fair enough. All right, so my number 5 is No More Tears. I think No More Tears is a great album. It's probably the first Ozzy album I heard in full. Ozzy solo album. Um, I'm not really 100% sure on that, but I think it is. I know it's the first one that I owned. Um, Mama, I'm Coming Home, No More Tears, both absolutely great songs. I actually really like Zombie Stomp. It's kind of just a fun track. But Hellraiser's awesome. Mr. Tinker Train I like too. Don't Want to Change the World, Road to Nowhere. Overall, like as a whole, I think it's a really solid album. It's one of those that I think can cross over and appeal to more people than just like the heavy metal crowd. Like it really does have some lasting crossover appeal. Interestingly enough, on the official Ozzy channel on YouTube, Mama I'm Coming Home is not available. I don't know why. Seems very weird. So just putting that out there. If you're trying to listen to it through YouTube, they find another way to listen to that track.
Like the video is not available?
Yeah, it's not at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, through the official Ozzy channel. So it was really weird because yeah, I was going through and listening to them through there because I have that easily available, and it just wasn't there. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a really solid album. Something very different. It kind of made him step out of his typical sound, and like I said, it has that really lasting appeal. So very cool.
Well, very good. I like this album, and it's a little bit higher up the chain for me. So I will go to my number five, which is "Bark at the Moon." So it goes hand in hand to me with "No Rest for the Wicked." I say that because, like I mentioned, it was one of those albums that came out brand new for me. It's like, now I'm starting to hear all the new Ozzy music. I'm not going backwards in time. Um, the video, absolutely crazy in terms of Bark, the title track, Bark the Moon, with Ozzy dressed up as a werewolf. But I knew at one point I had listened to all 8 songs in this album, and every single song I knew. Bark at the Moon, You're No Different. No, Now You See It, Now You Don't. Rock and Roll Rebel, Center of Eternity. That was a really good song. So Tired, Slow Down, Waiting for Darkness. All those, I at one point just knew like the back of my hand. I don't listen to side two as much anymore, except for Center of Eternity. Um, really cool song. I like it's a pretty quick song, fast paced. I like that part about it. Bark at the Moon. I mean, it's a classic. It is what it is. I mean, I believe they played Bark at the Moon at Back to the Beginning, right? One of the bands covered it, or was it one of the super groups? I can't remember.
I
I
haven't
know you
watched
have
it in full
you
yet.
haven't you haven't
Yeah.
watched it. I know. Um, Now You See It. Now it's just a good album. I like Rock and Roll Rebel a lot. So the thing about this album, and the reason why I call it a companion to No Rest for the Wicked, is the production. The production is just over the top. It's so 80s. It's so slick. It's like almost greasy the way how slick it is between this one and No Rest for the Wicked. It's to me, it's just overproduced. It's just too produced. It's too slick, especially coming off of Blizzard of Oz, which is so raw sounding, and yet it sounds great. And you got Diary that sounds great. Bark at the Moon is just like, whoa, what happened? And it's not like it's that deep into age. It's 1983, but it's so slick. And that has a lot to do with Max Norman, but still, um, it was slightly overproduced. I've listened to, a few years back, that whole controversy with Sharon having the tracks from Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake replaced by Mike Borden and Rob Trujillo. They also went in and remixed Bark at the Moon. They took away a lot of that slickness. I actually like that part about it, which is really cool. I don't mind it so much, but there are parts of Bark at the Moon itself, the song, that requires that extra little, I guess, reverb that's on there rather than just being dry. So it's a weird thought process, but it could have used a little. The remix could use a little bit more reverb. They made it really dry. Um, Still good though. So that's why, like with No Rest for the Wicked, even though there are 2 time periods, because there was an album in between, they go together kind of like almost. It's I don't want to say bookending because that's not the case. It's just that it's sat right in the middle of the 80s, 83 and 86 is right there, and they have a similar sound. So I think they go together more so than, let's say, The Ultimate Sin, because The Ultimate Sin stands alone to me by itself in terms of production and stuff like that. So that's another conversation that we'll have in a few more minutes. Bark at the Moon's my number five.
Right. My number 4 is Diary of a Madman. Um, I think it's a little bit of a step down from Blizzard of Oz, but that being said, like there's some stuff on here that I like even more than Blizzard of Oz. Like I love Over the Mountain, Flying High, and Flying High again, sorry, and Sado. I think those 3 songs are absolutely amazing. I like Tonight, Diary of a Madman, Little Dolls, and Believer. I mean, I really technically like the whole album. It is a front to backer, which says a lot. But for me, it is a step down. I think obviously I've put Blizzard of Oz higher. I don't know where it's going to land. Or you don't know. I do. Um but yeah, I mean I think it's a really incredible album. It is very sad that this is the last album we get from Randy Rhoads. And who knows what could have been. If this is a sophomore slump, then I mean, we would all hope for sophomore slumps of that level, So,
Well, I'm going to say this: Diary is not in this number 4 spot for me. So, number 4 for me is No More Tears. Um, when you look at the when you look at No More Tears as a whole, this is an outstanding album. Mr. Tinker Train starts it off. I Don't Want to Change the World, a single. Mom, I'm Coming Home, a big single. Like you just mentioned it. Lemmy's songwriting in this, the lyrics just outstanding. Um, just the production of the album is great. You got Desire, No More Tears, Hellraiser. I wasn't big on Sin. Um, Time After Time, Zombie Stomp, like you said, Road to Nowhere, or Aviation and Road to Nowhere. I like Road to Nowhere a lot as well. This is just an outstanding album. I listened to the crap out of this one when it came out too. Um, I think I listened to it so much that I got so tired of Mr. Tinker Train and Hellraiser that I don't listen to them much anymore.
that's kind of how I feel about the whole album, but yeah, no, I agree with you. It
I mean,
doesn't
and
take away how good it is.
right, exactly. I mean, uh, the
This
classic.
is Ozzy's Black album to me. Like
I can see that. I can
I
see
don't need
that.
to listen to it ever again, but at the same time, it's a great album.
I could see that. I could see that. So No More Tears is constantly played on the radio here. So that's the thing. It's never out of your mind,
Yeah.
in that regards. And Mike Inez's bass playing on that is just out fucking amazing. That slightly off time playing that he's got on it is just really, really cool. Um, I love the production on it. It was who was it? It was produced by Dwayne Barron and John Purdell. Outstanding production overall. Mama, I'm coming home. Just the guitar sound on that is just incredible. I love that guitar sound. Um, I don't know. This album for me is pretty good. It definitely, it, like you said, that's a really good comparison. It's the same. It's the Black album from Ozzy. It's really good. And Lemmy's all over this album. I mean, he's got one, two, three, 4 songwriting credits on this, and you're talking about Hellraiser, Desire, Mom, I'm Coming Home, and I Don't Want to Change the World. So Ozzy made uh, Lemmy a much richer man because of it. I tell you that. So that's my number 4.
He actually had 6 songs that he wrote for the album, but only 4 got put onto the album. So I'm curious what those other 2 were. If maybe
Hmm.
they got used later for Motorhead or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
My number 3 is Osmosis. You had it quite a bit lower. Um, I love this album. Perry Mason, I Just Want You, See You on the Other Side, My Little Man. My Little Man, I think, um, I as I've gotten older, it's more meaningful. I've lost my grandpa, who my dad was very close to, and just listening to those lyrics and thinking about family, it's one of those songs that really it hits home, and Ghost Behind My Eyes, Denial, Old LA Tonight. I think they're all really great songs. To me, this is a pretty much a front to back album. There's one or two songs that they're just kind of there for me, but as a whole, I really think it's great. I didn't obviously have that same hype behind the drums or whatever that you were talking about, so I didn't even know that was a thing. But I don't really see a problem with the production. I don't I like maybe there's a little flatness there, but like I don't know, it's never really bothered me. I think it sounds great. So no, I love this album. I think it's definitely Zach Wild's best album. on or for Ozzy.
Wow, that you and I have such a completely different opinion on this. And it's funny because you put this above No More Tears, which you're calling Ozzy's Black Album. So that's a very interesting take on it.
Well,
Um,
I don't think the Black Album's the best, Metallica album either. So, I mean, it's just one of those like it's mainstream appeal. Black Album to me doesn't like I think some people when they hear the Black Album they think, "Oh, it's Metallica's best album." And I just think it's the most mainstream, you know.
no, I agree with you there. It's definitely not their best album.
Yeah.
Saint Anger
That goes to
is
Saint Anger, yeah.
um, oh my god. All right. So that was your number 3, right?
Yes, it was.
All right. Well, my number 3 is The Ultimate Sin. That again, coming off of Bark at the Moon, Ultimate Sin comes out, and man, I could not put this album down. This album is just fucking amazing to me. Um, for Ozzy, you're talking about at this point in my life with Ozzy, it's 4 albums, and all 4 are just fucking great. The summer that this album came out, which was 86. So this came out in January 86, February 86 in the UK. It's just that summer I had just gotten my car, and my aunt said to me, "All right, I'll get you a car, but you got to get a job." Actually, she said to me, "You need to get a job and then I'll get you a car." And I said, "Well, I can't really go anywhere unless I have a car." So she's like, "Okay, you better promise." And I did. I got a job within, I want to say within a week of getting the car, or within 2 weeks. And I was at that job for a year, which was at the supermarket, not too far from our house. Anyhow, um, on my way to work, back and forth there, I mean, I'm listening to this album all the time on the way to school. This was in my stereo a lot. So, the Ultimate Sin, you're talking about the song The Ultimate Sin was it's really weird. It's not a really good opening track. It's not like a hype type track, but it's one of those songs. It's solid. Secret Loser was good. Never Know Why. Thank God for the Bomb is interesting. Never is probably for me the weakest song on the album, because
Agreed. 100% agreed.
yeah. Side 2 is an all, for lack of a better term, killer, because they Killer of Giants is the second song. But side 2, Lightning Strikes, Killer of Giants, Fool Like You, and then Shot in the Dark. It's not heavy and fast like previous stuff that Ozzy did, but I mean, it's just solid, solid, solid all the way through, and that's why I like it so much. I just listened to it so much in 1986 that it's one of those for me, because of my history with it. It ranks so high. It's number 3 for me.
What's funny is I was in the middle of a yawn and I interrupted my yawn just to agree with you about Never. Um, so Ultimate Sin is my number 2. Um, and for pretty much a lot of the reasons you said, obviously, like, I didn't listen to it in my car in 1986 because I was just born. But I love Ultimate Sin, Secret Loser. I've made no, I've not been shy about that because I've talked about that song in particular several times in the show. Thank God for the Bomb, Shot in the Dark. I think I actually heard Shot in the Dark, the cover from Children of Bottom, before I heard the actual Ozzy version. But I went back and I bought this album when I eventually did find it in I think it was Best Buy. Because I seem to remember buying this along with um oh man, it was another Ozzy album that I bought at the same time. Yeah, I really can't remember that. But regardless, I like the Aussie version better. And I'm a huge fan of Children of Bottom. Never Know Why, Lightning Strikes, Killer of Giants, Fool Like You, all great songs. Never's the weakest. Like, it's not a bad song. It's just kind of like the filler track of the album. And so I think all front to backers, not all, but a lot of them have like one song that's just a little bit lesser than the others. And overall, I think it's absolutely great. Like, Ozzy has, you know, said some poor things about the album before, and I don't really see why. Like, I think it's a great album.
It's funny because this is the one Ozzy album that's kind of like really hard to get. A lot of it had to do with his falling out with uh
Great Geely.
no, not Jake, with Phil Suzanne.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
So Phil being the main songwriter behind Shot in the Dark, um, Phil's not getting paid for that for a while, and then uh he basically had to kind of fight Sharon to get his songwriting credits and all that stuff, and get paid more about it than anything else. But I'm glad Jake E. Lee was able to put his foot down and say, I'm going to get my songwriting credits for this. Um, Otherwise, I'm just walking. And he
For
called
sure.
their bluff. So that was good. Good for him. So that's your number two. My number two, I'm pretty sure is very similar to what might be coming up next for you. My number two is Blizzard of Oz. Um, it is the album that basically started it all for Ozzy. Uh, Blizzard is a classic. I don't want to call it a masterpiece because there's some stuff on it that I would not necessarily consider masterpiece. But it is a classic. It is iconic, for a variety of reasons. Um, this is a front to backer for me, like you call some of the other albums. My favorite Ozzy song is on this album. I don't know. That song is incredible to me. Crazy Train, we all know that. Goodbye to Romance, again, going everything that I've said about Ozzy and his songs. That's the melancholy song. Um, Revelation Mother Earth is not the melancholy song. It's a slow song, but it's not the melancholy song. Goodbye to Romance is the melancholy song. It is so much, the hands waving in the air, everybody's moving left to right kind of thing. When you have a visual in your head, that is that song. D, Randy Rhoads, just enough said about that. I mean, it's just amazing. Suicide Solution, I knew about that song before I had heard this album, because I had gotten the single for uh, what was the name of the single that I got? What was it? Oh, it was a Mr. Crowley single that I picked up. That's the one I talked about. It has the song "You Said It All" on it, which has never been released on an album. Suicide Solutions on that, and that's the first time I heard it. And it was I didn't know that was a song that went into Randy's guitar solo. So this version is a little weird to me. So when I heard the album version, it was like, oh, it's a little different, so much heavier on live than Mr. Crowley, No Bone Movies. I never really liked Revelation Mother Earth, but I always had to deal with it if I wanted to go, listen into Steal Away the Night. So that's why it's a front to backer, because I'm like, I'm not gonna go get up for one song almost at the end of the album. Um, and yeah, that's my number two. It's your
All
number
right.
one, right?
Yeah, yeah. By default, it's my number one.
Oh, by
Um,
default.
well, no, because it's the only one left.
Right,
Like,
right.
if I said now it was, what was it? Ozman cometh, I think there'd be a problem, right? Um, all right, so yeah, I mean, I think it's the one that stands out the most to me for sure. What I really love about it is it's so raw. It's so like there's something there that's hard to define, right? Like I think we've talked about many times how, when you have a band that's just starting up, there's something indefinable about, that chemistry that comes right out of it. And so for me, when I'm listening to this album, I hear that where I'm just like, wow, that like this is a moment in time that's being captured, you know? And it's Ozzy coming right off of being fired from Black Sabbath. You know, he left, he came back, he puts out an album that's really lackluster. And this is Randy Rhoads' first album, which well, not first album technically, but his first album with the band, right? And there's something to prove there for everybody. Bob Daisley is, putting some of his best work out. Um, all of them, just met at this moment in time, right? And it's powerful. Um, I don't know is a great opener. Crazy Train is like one like, again, we always talk about these songs we never have to hear again. Crazy Train I've heard a billion times. I mean, when I used to go to Astros games here in Houston, um we they would play it constantly at the uh Minute Maid Park back when it was Minute Maid, or maybe it was Enron Field back then. Um but yeah, I mean, it's like, some of those songs, they're just like, they're so iconic, that you've heard it a billion times and you still can listen to it. You know, you don't go out of your way to listen to it anymore, but it's not like, oh my God, I've heard this a million times. You still listen to it, you know? Goodbye to Romance, I think, is absolutely great song. Obviously, you keep mentioning like there's these somber, ballads that Ozzy puts out, and it's pretty iconic as a song as a whole. Mr. Crowley, it's great. Just I mean, for me, it also has this like thought behind it, because there was this girl back in the day who I used to have a thing for, which was her last name was Crowley, and I always think back to that whenever I think about this song. But Suicide Solution, D, No Mode Movies, I do like Revelation Mother Earth. I can see, like, knowing your musical taste, why you're not a big fan. But Seal Away the Night is great. Like, to me, it's a front to back nine songs out of nine. I love, and that's kind of one thing I rated this on. Like, I went down and I said, well, I like 8 songs out of 9 on this album, 7 songs out of 10. That wasn't the only factor, because sometimes the weight of the song itself affects it as well. So, as a whole, I mean, I just think it's one of those albums that, like, yeah, it might be a masterpiece, but not in the like the terminology where you say like a masterpiece is defined by like true musical mastery or anything like that. It is a masterpiece in this, like I said, like this chronicle of time, like where Kismet just kind of brought all of these things together. So I think I love it, and I definitely think it's their best album.
Okay, I mean, I can understand that your point of view on masterpiece. So I look at it like this: when I said it wasn't a masterpiece, um, Master of Puppets from Metallica is their masterpiece, in my opinion, right? And some people will say Ride the Lightning and the first four kind of thing, right? And um, but to me, Master of Puppets is the masterpiece. I could see that being the case for Blizzard of Oz, because I like Ride the Lightning better than I like Master of Puppets. So you see how that works, and it's the same thing where like you have, for me, um, Kill 'Em All doesn't have the same effect. It's weird because Kill 'Em All was such uh, a groundbreaking album, right? But Master Puppets is that much better.
Yeah.
For me, um, Blizzard of Oz is what sets up Diary. So for me, my number one album is Diary of a Madman, because it's not the same in any regards. It's really weird. Two iconic albums, both Randy Rhoads albums. Diary of a Madman, I put it this way: I think is better than Blizzard of Oz, but it's a completely different reason, or completely different. It's so much different than Blizzard. It's technically is less accessible. The songs are not as I guess as poppy or is not as hooky in a way, right? But yet
Mhm.
they still are. Like Over the Mountain, fucking brutal song. I mean, the way that song starts with Lee Kerslake hitting that double bass drum. I mean, not a lot of people know who Lee Kerslake is, right? Everyone attributes that intro to Tommy Aldridge because that's all they know. As Tommy Aldridge is the face of this album, as a drummer, he's not the one who played those drums. That was Lee Kerslake. So that in and of itself is like, damn, that was Lee Kerslake, right? And that was Bob Daisley on bass, you know? So it's the same band that put together Blizzard of Oz. So that's what makes it so weird in a way, because it's two different albums. I mean, almost two different musical styles to some degree, so much heavier on Diary than on Blizzard. Um, I guess you could say like Steal Away the Night almost is kind of like an introduction of what's to come, because it was so fast and heavy, and riffy.
It's one of my favorite songs that
Uh,
Ozzy has, period. Like,
Steal Away.
no, I'm sorry. I thought
You
I'm
talking
still
about Over the
talking
Mountain?
about Over the Mountain. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, no, Over the Mountain, great song. Then you go into Flying High Again. That's got such a freaking hook to it. But again, it's not the same song as Crazy Train. Crazy Train is just fucking ultimate hook, for Ozzy. Super great song. And that is his defining moment to some degree. But um then you go on to was it what was that song what's after Flying High again? Duh, I have it right here. um it's You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. I mean, there's the melancholy part again, you know. Um it's the lyrics are so poignant to it, You can't kill rock and roll. But then you got Believer. That was one of the first songs that I learned to play on bass, and I still know how to play that intro, that sleazy little intro bass line to it. Little Dolls, always that song always had a little bit of a, I don't know if it's an editing issue when they put the song together, but there's something about it that sounds off when he goes into that from the slow kind of drum roll into the faster drum fill. I don't know if they spliced them together or what the deal was, but something always seemed off from the very beginning. But still a pretty cool drum intro. Tonight, SATO. SATO is an interesting song because I always wanted to know what the hell does SATO stand for. I can never figure it out. And then Diary. I'm going to say this about Diary. To me, Diary of a Madman, the song, is such a beautiful song by Randy Rhoads. Classically influenced. I can't help but almost fall into a trance with that song. There's something beautiful about that song to me. It's very similar to how Limelight by Rush. There's a beauty to that song. And Diary of a Madman is just there's such a dichotomy between the title and the lyrics and what's being played. And then you have that the outro with the vocal and the choir, and that sound. There's such it's hard to express it in any other words other than the word beautiful. The slow acoustic guitar intro that just goes into this pounding heavy riff, right? I don't know. It's something for me. Diary of a Madman is, to me, Ozzy's best work as a solo artist. I know everyone's going to sit there and say, including yourself, Blizzard of Oz, but for me, my opinion, Diary.
Hey, that's why we have opinions, right?
Yeah. All right. So we got through it. 12 albums. I think both, obviously someone out there is going to sit there and say you guys are fucking nuts. How could you even sit there and say that Ordinary Man's not the number one album? But everyone has their opinions, like we just said. So, guys, write into us. Let us know, what are your top 12? What's your 12 best Ozzy albums? No live albums, all in the studio. All right, well, now it's time for the big four, and our big four today, we're bringing it back. I told you we bring it back. We finally actually paid attention to it. So we've done Ozzy songs before, we've done Ozzy albums before, done Black Sabbath and this and anything. This time we're going a little bit deeper. Ozzy's big four, or the big four Ozzy deep tracks, the ones that you and I may know, but the general public has no idea about, or doesn't think about it, or won't hear about it on the radio. So, since you went first on the albums, I'm going to go first on my big four.
Okay.
All right, number 4 for me is Rock and Roll Rebel from Bark at the Moon. Killer riff, love that riff. If it was a little bit less produced, a little bit less slick, it'd be freaking amazing. But still amazing in general. It's a deep track. I think that was one of the songs that could have been a classic kind of Ozzy song, but they just dealt with Bark at the Moon, and even then they don't play, or Ozzy didn't play a lot of stuff off of Bark at the Moon after the Bark at the Moon tour. I think he played Bark at the Moon a couple times more, and that was really it. Number 3 for me, Junkie from Down to Earth. Just the riff, the meaning behind it, it all adds up to a really, really heavy song. I love it. Just to get the guitar sound that Zach's got on that is pretty freaking cool. So we'll go with that one for number 3. Number 2, Suicide Solution. Like I said, it wasn't a single. It was a controversial song because it's about basically drinking yourself to death. And but it's got such a killer riff that Randy put together on that album that it's an undeniable song. And number 1 for me, I just finished mentioning it with the Diary of a Madman album, is the song Diary of a Madman. It's just one of the most beautiful songs that was put together in Ozzy's catalog. So that's my big 4 Ozzy deep tracks.
All right. So I don't have any crossover with you on this one at all.
Cool.
Yeah, my number 1. I'm sorry, my number 1. Let me start over. Let's start at the top and go down. My number 4 is actually Amy. I know it's a B side off of something. I just don't remember what the B side is. But it's a song for his daughter. That I guess they became a bit estranged as time went on, and it's something I personally can't relate to, but I can definitely feel it, because I have friends that have experienced that, and things like it's not easy, right? But also just knowing what my relationship was with, say, my dad as I was younger, he and I didn't get along as well. And you wouldn't be able to tell today, but it's not always about being a friend. It's about being a parent and things like that. It's tough. So it's a really cool song. I think it's just good in general, not just because of the meaning behind it, but because of the song itself. My number 3 is Sato, or Sato. There's a lot of prevailing theories about what it means. Sailing away into oblivion is one of them. There's also thought that it could be sailing across the ocean. There's even thoughts that it was Sharon Osbourne, Thelma, or Sharon Arden, Thelma Osborne. Just which is kind of interesting. But there's been a lot of thoughts over the years, but sailing away into oblivion, or sailing away to oblivion, seems to be the prevailing thought. But as a whole, I think the song is just really killer. It's my favorite song off of Diary of a Madman, that nobody knows because Over the Mountain and Flying High again, I think everybody knows. But you know, that's number three for me essentially. I mentioned this one earlier. My number two is My Little Man. Um, you know, I think now I I hope it gives Jack some kind of solace, you know, going back and listening to that song because it is so um you know, just it's really beautiful, you know, and as somebody that has had issues with family in the past and then kind of, you know, come back around and this time around, you know, I really appreciate them. You know, hearing those words I think it sinks in a lot for me. So, um, I really I really love that song. I think it's even listening to it yesterday again, um, really reminded me of how good it was. And then my number one, I've mentioned it many, many, many times, Secret Loser. I think it is a really cool song. I love the riff. Um, it's one of those that's very energizing and awesome. I hope you all go out and listen to it.
Very good. I like that. I like that was a very diverse uh, big four deep tracks. Amy comes off of the Osmosis B
Ah,
sides.
well, that would make sense since I do really like Osmosis. So.
Yes, you do. All right. Well, that's our big four for tonight. I want to thank Ozzy for such an incredible career and such incredible music. I've been a fan of Ozzy and Black Sabbath since about 1982, 1981, somewhere around there. Actually, more like 1982, because I got into Ozzy after Randy passed away. Um, without Ozzy, without you, Ozzy, my life would be very, very different from what it is now. Musical taste wise, basically, you and Bill Ward and Geezer Butler and Tony Iommi forged a brand of music, a style of music that is so near and dear to my heart that I am nothing but thankful for the years that you have given me as a fan. I was able to see you a few times, so I appreciate everything that you, in a weird way that you don't know who I am. You have given me a really, really humongous gift that I can never be thankful enough for. Thank you.
That's really nice. You know, Ozzy, I came into listening to his music at a different time than you did. You know, by the early 2000s, like things were a lot different as far as his career. I mean, I had heard stuff obviously earlier with Black Sabbath and things like that, but you know, when you're a little kid, you're not really cognizant, and now I think it's easier because like you know the internet and everything, and you can look stuff up more easily. But like you're not as aware of um you know all the connections and who's in this band and how many albums are there and this and that. And so you know when I really started collecting music when I had money, you know I started getting Aussie albums and you know viewed him in a different way too because you know as we were going into the 2000s the Osbournes came around and I've always really disliked reality TV in general, and so I was not a big fan. But you know Ozzy has connections to wrestling through different songs appearing you know in different ways, and always you know being a fan of that, like you know stuff came up that way. Um and so he's always just kind of been there, you know, like we mentioned Hulk Hogan earlier, like you know, those two people have been, you know, they're iconoclasts, right? Like they're just in the culture, you know. And Ozzy has literally always been there in my entire life and has always had some kind of major mark in time periods of my life. And I think I was saying this to you the other day, like maybe it was a day or so after he passed away, is that like there's times that I look back on, just like times hanging out with friends, or you know, just different things that happen in my life that, there's it's almost like he's a soundtrack in my life in some way too, and so it is very sad. You look back and you look forward, I should say, and you say, well, I only have so much time left. I want to, you know honor that memory, because listening to a recent interview of him talking about how great his life was. you know we all have a choice to make our lives good or bad. There's shit that happens. There are always terrible things that can happen, etc., but we have a choice to look at it as good or bad, and step forward from here. And so listening to, him talk and reflect on his life and look at it and say, even though I have Parkinson's disease, I have lived a great life. I have a great family. I've experienced so many things. I've gone to these, different things. Well, we don't always have the step forward or the silver spoon in our mouth, but we can choose to do good things with our life as well. So I appreciate Ozzy a lot, and he will be missed.
Yes, you will.
All right. So, with that said, on behalf of Kenneth and myself, stay safe and always turn it up to 11.
See ya.
Thank you. Good night. You're the greatest people.